Hello, welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket with me, Simon Mann, and you, Simon Hughes. A different start to our podcast this week. Well, the new season's just around the corner, and we're going to talk about the optimism of youth today, Yoz. What were you doing when you were 13?
I shouldn't admit that, should I really? I was smoking behind the bike sheds. No, actually, I wasn't. Well, what I was doing was in March of whenever I was 13, I was playing football for Latimer School. And I was writing reports of the games afterwards. And I've got a little book of them here. Here's one match. This is Latimer against Cardinal Vaughan. And the report, Latimer 4, Cardinal Vaughan 2, it just says, about 10 minutes from the start, Hughes was kicked hard in the ankle, and although he continued playing, found he had a very nasty cut. And then 2 days later, Latimer 2, Spencer Park 1, it says, a very well-earned win should have been 4 or 5-0, despite the absence of Hughes through injury in the match against Cardinal Vaughan. So very conceited and probably totally skewed as well.
So you were writing about yourself, were you there?
Basically.
Anyway, the reason we started with what we were doing at 13, of course, is because Vaibhav Suryavanshi is he going to make his IPL debut at the age of, he was 14 when the IPL gets underway. We'll talk about that today. We'll also talk about another player who made his international debut very young, Mason Crane. So he was the guest on the World's Best Cricket Club this week, and he talks about his Test debut and what he hopes for the future.
Yes, and actually, of course, we will be interested to see what he says about spinners early season, because it's cold, isn't it, at this time of year? And often spinners get left out, actually. So it's a tough time of year for spin bowlers generally. At least some of the county teams have been playing abroad to warm up for the season. There's been that small tournament in Abu Dhabi featuring 5 counties and SACA, the South Asian Cricket Academy, won by Notts on the last day. They beat Warwickshire fairly easily. Durham have been in Zimbabwe. Lancashire have been in India, playing in Bangalore. So, a fair variety of different ways of preparing for the game. Middlesex have been in their indoor marquee, or their marquee on the Merchant Taylors ground in Northwood. Surrey probably done the same, haven't they? Quite a few others. Glamorgan, Mason Crane saying they've been loosening up inside a market. I just think back actually to pre-season in my day, and God, it was at Barclays Bank Sports Ground in Ealing, and we had to do a few bits of gym work and play five-a-side football, and then have a big lunch and go home. It wasn't
So
very.
you played football to prepare for the start of the cricket
basically,
season.
yeah. And one year actually, we were playing five-a-side football, and I got tripped, and I dislocated my elbow and didn't play for about 3 months. So, not the best way of getting ready for the season. But I think these days counties are slightly more systematic and planned in how they prepare. I mean, it's still different, isn't it? Wherever you've been, whether you've been in a heated marquee or in Abu Dhabi or Zimbabwe, coming to play in England, as we said before, is totally different.
Yeah. Well, it's a lovely sunny day in London today, but how long is it going to last for? It's going to be even nicer, apparently, tomorrow. But the new season's a couple of weeks away, and you must have played in those days. I mean, you probably didn't start the season as early, actually, did you? Back in the day when you were playing in the 14th century, it was a much later start to the season. But it still gets pretty cold when you get one of those sort of rasping cut shots and you're feeling in the gully or third slip or something.
Slip, that's the place.
Yeah,
In fact,
horrible.
Mason Crane, yeah, definitely. I mean, Mason Crane actually says in his interview that he didn't like fielding at slip because of the coldness in the early season. When it got to midsummer, he thought, I quite fancy fielding at slip. But by then, somebody else was resident, so he couldn't get in. So, I mean, actually, we only started, I think, from memory, in about the second week of April, and we used to play the universities. Often used to go to Cambridge, and that's where people wore balaclavas and gloves and things like that to field in, because Cambridge is, I don't know how well you know Cambridge, but I know it quite well because my son was at uni there. It's absolutely freezing place. Even in the height of summer, it's pretty chilly. So that was a cold place to start. I the weather over the last few years hasn't been as bad early season, perhaps. But yeah, you've still got to be prepared for the body warmers underneath the shirt and the gloves in your pocket, or those hand warmers or something.
So what about Mason Crane then? One of those cricketers who was, touted as a potential star when he was younger. That's kind of the theme, wasn't it, when we started off today? And you're looking at this young lad who's got his IPL contract, and hey, he's one for the future, isn't he? And nothing is guaranteed in sport at any level. You can be a prodigy at 14, 15, 16, whatever, even as late as 18, 20, and you just fall away. People sort of catch up with you, or you don't quite fulfill your potential for whatever reason it might be. But Mason Crane was picked for his Test debut at the age of 20. I was there in Sydney. England really up against it in the series. It was the final Test match. The other thing I remember about that game is absolutely roasting hot in Sydney. It was low 40s, hot for even Sydney, and he came up with 48 overs, one for 193. And I remember, at the time it was exciting that England were picking a leg spinner, but the sort of cold, harsh reality, not of the game because it was roasting hot, but the cold, harsh reality of Test cricket, it was a really tough situation for him. Khawaja got 100. Both Marshes got 100. Actually, I was just looking back at the game earlier. Jimmy Anderson, though, 34 overs, 1 for 56 in a score of 649, 7 declared. Anyway, so since then, before that, he played a couple of T20s. Last season, he actually took part in the game of the season, perhaps one of the game of the century, possibly that amazing tied match at Cheltenham. One thing I noticed as well is that he seems to have improved his batting. So in that game, 44 and 43 not out. But last summer, he scored 468 runs at 36. In terms of wickets, last summer, 29 wickets at 44.37. I remember Bobby Simpson once saying, I remember doing an interview with him and saying, leg spin, toughest art in cricket. It's the toughest thing to master. It's the toughest thing to get right and be successful. He was talking about Chris Schofield at the time, another young leg spin bowler that didn't really make the most of attributes he had. It's a really tough game, isn't it? Bowling leg spin, especially I think probably if you're an English leg spinner, because the conditions don't really suit your way of playing, your way of bowling.
Well, yeah, I mean, Adil Rashid is very much an outlier, isn't he? He's been a huge success, although not so much in Test cricket, but I mean, he's had a brilliant one-day career. But really, we haven't, there have been other examples of leg spinners who've had a go. I remember Ian Salisbury, who played in India in the 90s for England, who had one or two tests, and obviously Rayan Ahmed has had a go recently as well, and has had mixed results. He took his 5 for didn't he on debut, but then found it a bit harder going after that. I mean, it's a tough form of bowling because you're doing so much work with the wrist, and in a way your arm is coming quite across the delivery path of the ball because of the use of the wrist. And as a result, it's quite hard to control your line and length. And often you find that a leg spinner does bowl, 4 good balls and then a long hop and a full toss. And the trouble is, and this is an area we got into with Mason actually, was the trouble is captains are a bit intolerant of spinners. And, if they do get hit for a few runs, they just get whipped off again. So they don't ever build up any real confidence. I mean, Shane Warne obviously changed the world and the world's perception of leg spin by his dramatic arrival, and secondly, his incredible control. That was the thing about Warne. Not, you can see all these highlights, clips of his brilliant deliveries, and there were many of them. But in the end, what was his real secret was his blanket of accuracy that just denied batsmen liberty, and then eventually he would get them out, or someone else would get them out. I mean, I think he conceded 2.5 runs and over in his Test career, which is incredibly accurate, and the same as the most miserly faster bowlers. So you have to have that control, and if you don't, you become a bit of a luxury, which captains aren't prepared to invest in.
And there is a link, isn't there, between Mason Crane and Shane Warne? There
is. He totally took the game up because of Shane Warne. It was in 2005. Mason was 8. He was actually, he says, just drawn into watching the sort of last stages of the great 2005 Ashes 20 years ago. Basically, just saw England raise the raised the urn and saw a bit of the last test. But then he said, I was glued to the box set after that in the following Christmas. I think someone gave him it for a Christmas present, actually. And he just watched it and watched it and watched it and was obsessed by Shane Warne and found he could bowl leg spin. And basically from then on, age 8, 9, 10, bowled leg spin all the time in junior cricket and got sort of quick promotion. And just loved it, really enjoyed the challenge. He met Shane Warne a couple of times in his development when he was playing in England. And then obviously he met him on his test debut as well and sort of latterly worked under him for London Spirit as well.
Should we hear from Mason Crane then, Yoz?
Yes, one of the first things I asked him actually was, thinking about this time of year, that it's tough for especially leg spinners because they tend not to get picked, and that's one of the reasons he left Hampshire, because he just wasn't getting enough cricket. But particularly early season, you look down the team sheets, and if it's one spinner, you're lucky. So I said to him, with that in mind, how do you keep your motivation?
Well, because I love my job, so I mean it's not for me very difficult really to motivation is not really a thing I'm going to struggle with. I love bowling. I love playing the game. I love training and feeling like I'm improving. Um, so yeah, I mean, I've also come to terms very, very early in my career. I came to terms with the fact that there are going to be weeks throughout every season, perhaps even longer, where I'm not going to be needed, but I will be needed at some point. So I have to stay on it, and um, it's not easy, sort of week to week as a spinner. Sort of no matter how you're bowling, it's still week to week generally, whether you're going to be playing or not. But I think you just got to come to terms with that early on and not take it personally. I think you sort of almost got to put yourself in the coaches or the selector or the captain's shoes and go, okay, there some weeks it's going to be tough to get a game and do much, but that's an opportunity then to work on stuff maybe didn't go well the week before, or stuff you can add to your game for when you're next called upon. But with a couple of injuries in there as well, that's sort of obviously if you're not on it, a couple of years can sort of slip by you, which is basically where we got to a couple of years ago.
I mean, is it also though an attitude thing? That we don't really manage spin bowlers very well in this country. I know Sean Udall, your former colleague at Hampshire, was saying that when he first played under Shane Warne, one of the first things Warney said is just bowl a couple of maidens, and so that you can stay on. And because if you get hit for 10 off and over, people just whip you off. Whereas if you're a seamer, you get hit for 10 off and over, people go, well, I can remember that happening to me, and they gave me another over, and you got it back together. But spinners seem to be on that sort of very narrow lifeline, almost a tightrope. And if they do slip up and concede a few, then they're whipped off. So, is there a kind of issue that we don't manage spinners as well as we should?
Yeah, I think there is, if I'm being honest, and actually that's something Shane Warne said to me. He used to say that the attitude towards spin bowlers in this country is crazy to him because likewise he said it's one of those things very easy to like not pick, very easy to not bowl, but actually it's the sort of thing where you don't find your rhythm as a spinner right in the first over or two. You need to find some, and obviously, like you said, there a couple of maidens to start. I mean, that's always absolutely ideal, but you get a lot of batters now. They know that, so they come really hard at you those first couple of overs, trying to get you out the attack because obviously, if you do settle in and find a rhythm, you're going to be a threat to them. So, I think the best captains I've had certainly make you feel a very important part of the side, but also show you that as well in their actions, in like I say, keeping you on for maybe an extra over or a time of the game where it'd be quite easy to look at another option to go, actually this is the time for you. So I think as an attitude towards spin bowling, yeah, we maybe don't maybe take it seriously is not the phrase I'm looking for, but we perhaps don't recognize the potential all the time in what we can sort of get out of the spinners.
And what would your advice be? I mean, to a captain, doesn't have to be your captain, but any captain. I mean, how can they help, do you think? How can they help you and your like prosper more?
Well, I think firstly, I think it's about being used as part of the attack, the bowling attack, not after it. So I think a lot of the time you see spinners come on once the seamers have had a good go and they're tired and actually the ball's getting on a bit. Whereas I think the captains that really use spin bowl as well, they are certainly used as part of it. It's a couple of early overs maybe to have a look. It's a bit more of a um, sort of a vision of how they're going to be used throughout the day instead of just sort of getting us through to the second new ball. Um, because I think obviously when you watch Test cricket for especially away from home in India and places like that, the spinners come on quite early. The ball's hard. You have the seams still sharp on the ball, so you can get more out of it. And there's certainly times in England where you can use that. Not all the time, to be fair. But I certainly think there are times in the season when we can use spin a bit earlier, and you know if it doesn't work, that's fine. Come back later on, um, and be used as an attacking weapon, not just like I said, once the seamers have had a go. So I obviously met him in Australia on that tour, but then he obviously coached me at London Spirit the first year. So yeah, that actually I got to speak to him a little bit, but it's one of those where it's so hectic and busy. It was actually quite tough to sort of get a good chunk of time in at once. But when he was the coach at the Spirit, that was just the most amazing, 5 or 6 weeks ever because every day we'd bowl together, like he would bowl as well. We'd talk about it and sort of have conversations really that you would only really have if you also sort of bowl leg spin. So it's always really cool to have those sorts of chats with people who were such amazing international players because, like I said, there's sort of not too many around. But obviously, he was the king, and the way that he sort of carried himself firstly, but also spoke about the game and his knowledge and stuff like that is very, very, very unique.
It's interesting, it's because I followed his career very closely. I covered him when he was first in the Australian side, and I got to know his coach as well, Terry Jenner, who was known as the spin doctor. And if you think about it, the progression's quite interesting. So Richie Benno learned his leg spin from a couple of older players like Clary Grimmett and people like that in the 30s. And Benno then learned to bowl. And then he taught a couple of others. Terry Jenner was one of them. And then Jenner sort of taught Warne. And I was in the nets one day, early in Warne's career, actually. And Terry Jenner was there, sort of teaching him to do some one or two little kind of clever strategies. They were playing the West Indies, and Warne was bowling in the nets. And Terry Jenner said, Warne was bowling to Matthew Hayden, left-hander. And Terry Jenner said, well, when I used to bowl against left-handers, I used to go wide of the crease and bowl the same ball. And it would change the angle, and you could get wickets that way. And I got sobers. He said, I got Garfield sobers out. So give it a go. So Warne tried a few in the nets, bowling wider of the crease, same delivery. Matthew Hayden played and missed it a couple. And then in the match, the next day, West Indies test, Warne comes on, Chanderpaul and Lara are in. He goes wide of the crease. He gets them both out caught, the same over. One caught gully, one caught slip. And at the end of the over, Terry Jenner's in the commentary box doing radio, and Warney just turns and sort of doffs his cap to Terry Jenner, and Jenner's on commentary. But it's a long-winded way of saying leg spin is such a unique, almost magical art, and it's those little tricks that get sort of passed on from one to another. So you're the recipient of that in a way, that
Yeah.
progression.
Well, yeah. I mean, Warren would probably have a few of those, to be honest, around the globe. 'Cause he's so generous with his time. But you're right. Like they're the sort of discussions you have, and yeah, and the sort of passing on of knowledge and stuff like that. You can only really have with each other in a weird way.
Mm.
Because like you said, he's sort of been there, done it before, and heard it from before then and before then. So um, to have the opportunity to have had that time with him was honestly such a great honor, and I'm so glad that I got to experience that.
Mason Crane, though, well, I mean, I suppose I felt a bit sorry for him, actually, do you? Because He was pitched into it a bit, wasn't he, in that Test debut?
Yeah, it's and huge expectations, and you never, I'd say never going to live up to them. It's very difficult to live up to them. Of course, at the time, the comparison was made with Shane Warne, because Shane Warne made his debut and it didn't go particularly well, did it? I think he went for something like 1 for 150 in his Test debut, and Mason Crane went for, well, nearly 1 for 200, and he probably would have done if the Australians hadn't declared and had a bit of mercy on England. They still went on to win the match by an innings, and then he had that back injury, the stress fracture in his back, and it's hard enough bowling leg spin as a youngster, without that happening. But the levels are so high, aren't they? And batters these days are so ruthless, and they're looking to take you down. So you need the accuracy, and you need that subtlety as well. You need that variation, that ability to spin it both ways, and to hold your line and your length as well.
Yeah, and of course it's the thing that Warne said. You've got to keep yourself on. If you bowl a couple of loose ones in your first over and get hit for 2 fours, and then that happens again, your captain takes you off and you don't get a look in for a while. So actually, it's about bowling nous as well. It's about, where do I bowl to just convince the captain that I'm going to be valuable here? And then he'll give me a few overs, and then I can get into my work and try my variations and things. But it's actually about getting a few deliveries down. You notice actually with Adil Rashid, when he comes on in one-day cricket, I mean, almost invariably, his first ball is a flat slider, straight. So he just gets his line and length initially with the ball that he knows. He's not relying on big spin or back of the hand or anything. He's just going to get it down there straight on a length and force the batsman ideally into a defensive shot. And that way he gets a bit of confidence, and then he can start to try his variations and his slower balls and his back of the handers and all that later. But he sort of tries to get that kind of basic consistency first. And talking about bowling now, so I should just mention this character, this young player that you mentioned, who'd been signed by the Rajasthan Royals, Vaibhav Suryavanshi, who is an incredible prodigy, obviously. Is he 13? Well, who knows? I mean, sometimes these birth dates, people are a bit sceptical about them. Watching him bat, though, in social media clips, he looks incredible. I mean, he's quite strong looking, especially for a 13-year-old. He's got quite sort of beefy shoulders, left-handed, absolutely belts it. And actually, he reminds me a bit of Brian Lara, because he's got this incredible sort of 360 backlift. Apparently, he handles high pace, 85 to 90 miles an hour in the nets, with aplomb. And there's a note here from Zubin Baracha, the Rajasthan Royals director of cricket, who spotted him, and he's the sort of guru who's brought on the likes of Yashasvi Jaiswal and others. And he says about Suryavanshi, he says, he's highly gifted. I haven't seen anyone so young bat like this. Tendulkar is the only other name that comes to mind. He might be 13 or maximum 14 or 15, but either way, he's super young and incredibly gifted. He can hit a long ball. High pace doesn't trouble him, but he just hasn't had the experience to know how to score runs in this format as yet. So that's the key, isn't it? It's an investment in the future. With a lot of these franchises, or most of these IPL franchises, they're buying players they know are going to be there for 3 years. And so by the 3rd year, they feel that, that development will be processing, and they will be able to add a lot of value. But perhaps the first year is more of a learning year, really.
Yeah, and that's possible, isn't it? I mean, Vikram Rathore, the batting coach for the Rajasthan Royals, he said, we're not sure if we're going to play him. I mean, there'll be a lot of interest, and they certainly be interested if they do. But I mean, again, it's top level sport, isn't it? It's ruthless. You want to win. So are you going to throw someone in at that age if you're not quite sure about them? But he's obviously clearly talented. I mean, he's got runs in the List A competition in India. He's also got runs at youth level for India as well. So why not? It'd be great to see him in action, wouldn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
It's a phenomenon, really. Some of that age.
I said actually that he reminded me of Lara to bat. And actually, Zubin said he actually looks like Rishabh Pant. So I asked him who was his favourite player, expecting him to say Pant, but he actually said Lara, funnily enough.
Yeah.
In fact, I think he's too young to have even seen Lara. He must have actually just watched him on some videos or something, because he certainly wouldn't have seen him in the flesh live. I noticed the other day, by the way, talking of the IPL also, I noticed that Shreyas Iyer, who's one of the sort of stars of the Indian batting order now, he remembers at the first ever IPL, 2008, he was a ball boy at Mumbai, and he just was invited by his local school to go down and watch the game, and threw a few balls back when they were hit for boundaries, and got the autographs. The two people he wanted autographs from were Irfan Pathan, the left arm seamer and all rounder, and Ross Taylor, who apparently very graciously came up and signed this little 8-year-old's scorebook or card or whatever. And now Shreyas Iyer's a star of his own, isn't he?
Well, he played in the Champions Trophy final, but he's also just a little IPL factoid, because he played for the Winners last year, and there's some sort of falling out at KKR, and now he's gone to Punjab, and that's kind of where actually IPL cricketers seem to go to die, actually, Punjab, because they've had a shocking record. So, actually, can Shreyas Iyer inspire them to, well, actually some success, because they just have had very little in the IPL.
And you said, by the way, didn't you? You said you'd noticed that Hardik Pandya has been banned for one game for slow over rates.
Yeah, well, that comes back to last season. Yeah, hurrah, at last. Someone's noticed the game takes hopefully this season, rather than the game's taking 8 hours, they'll take 7 hours. But yeah, so 3 times last season he was slow with his over 8 as captain of Mumbai Indians. So he's got a 1-match ban at the start of the season, which I think has kind of surprised him. But that might just put everyone on notice, just to speed up a bit. I mean, everyone has their own views about the IPL, what they like and don't like about it. And some people listening to this probably absolutely hate us and probably resent the fact we're even talking about the IPL. But it is a glamorous competition. It's full of all the star players, and there is a lot to be beguiled by and a lot to be irritated by. And one of the things that really irritates a lot of people is the slow over rate, because the games just take forever and ever, and the over rate's slower than Test cricket. So if they're going to do something just to speed the game up a bit, then I say hurrah.
Well, let's get back to traditional cricket and talk about 2 players just briefly who will be in the county championship early season. 2 fantastic players, Joe Root and Marnus Labuschagne. And the reason we're going to talk about them just briefly is because Mason Crane has played against one and with the other. And he talks actually beautifully about practicing with Joe Root on an England tour. And how we got into this really was that we asked each of our guests on the World's Best Cricket Club to pick their ultimate cricketer by breaking a player down into individual shots. Who would you like to have your defence, Rahul Dravid? Who would you like to have to play your on-drive, Sachin Tendulkar? Who would you like to play your sweep shot? And a lot of players, notably Mason Crane, say Joe Root. And here's why.
Sweep. I'll say Joe Root again, just because I've suffered a lot of that in the nets. I was a reserve in Sri Lanka a few years ago when he sort of first came out with that sweeping every ball sort of thing. And remember, I was bowling with Matt Parkinson in the nets, and he swept honestly every ball I bowled. Didn't really miss one. Thin bat. It was quite degrading. And we had a warm-up game. He did the same. And I was thinking, Christ, maybe I'm not very good. And then he went out and did it to Sri Lanka, and me and Parky turned to each other and we said, thank God for that, because it's not just us. He's doing it to everyone. It's actually fine. But yeah, he also did it to me last year. He scored 100 against us for Yorkshire, and I think he just swept every ball, even if it just goes for one. He's so good at it. Playing with Marnus is exactly how you'd expect it to be. I've never really met anyone with quite energy for the game. I was bowling in one game, and he's put the helmet on, no one's asked him to, and just started fielding close, and he's moving himself every ball, he's moving every fielder every ball. As I'm coming into bowl, I can see him like with his arms gesturing people around. He's the first in the nets. Yeah, all of that. He absolutely loves it. If there's change room cricket to be played, he'll be the one batting. But yeah, he sort of brings a great energy, which you don't see in a lot of people.
What are the rules of dressing room cricket these days? Is it caught off the wall or caught off the table, or is there a special rule? I mean, how does he stay in? Or he doesn't give the bat to anybody else?
No, well, he doesn't always, because we always just give him out. But yeah, generally no attacking shots really, so you're not disturbing the guys who aren't playing, and someone having a cup of tea in the corner. But yeah, they tape up the seam and whatnot and try and make it spin and bounce and seam and stuff. So, but yeah, he'll bat in any scenario he can get in any format, in anything. He just loves the game.
Would you like to have shared a dressing room with Marnus Labuschagne or someone like Marnus Labuschagne, or did you share a dressing room with someone like Marnus Labuschagne? What do you think about that? It's interesting actually when the Australians put that stuff on social media, they do it quite regularly, don't they? One of the questions they ask is who's the most annoying person in the dressing room, and almost to a man they all say Marnus Labuschagne. I mean, I think it's sort of said affectionately, but with a sort of hint of sort of truth behind it as well. Who was your sort of toughest, sort of, not toughest? Who was your most sort of annoying teammate?
Probably Tuffers, actually. Tuffers was annoying because he was always smoking. So, in those days, the dressing room was not a smoke-free zone. And because we played two competitions, which were sponsored by cigarettes as well, Benson Hedges and John Play League, there was tons of cigarettes available. So he was like chain smoking. And the little corner of the dressing room was just a sort of cloud of smog, basically. And then also he'd be asleep for most of the time, and then he'd wake up when it was perhaps number 7 or 8 was going in, and start getting all his protective gear on, even if it was a medium pacer bowl. He'd say, "Oh, I've got to get a helmet. Who can lend me an arm guard? Who can lend me a thigh pad? Who can lend me a chest pad?" And we say, "Well, it's only Colin Wells bowling medium pace, or Tim Munton or someone." But, "Oh no, but it might hit me. It might." So who can lend me a bat? God. So he'd go from totally asleep to hyperactive and frenetic, and that was quite annoying.
Let's finish off today, Yoz, by talking about something that might happen in the future. We don't quite know, how it's going to progress, but this Saudi league, what was your reaction when you heard about it? I mean, basically the bare bones. Well, they are only bare bones, it seems at the moment. A, they've got lots of money. B, they want to play 4 tournaments, kind of like tennis Grand Slams. Just a reminder, the tennis Grand Slams are New York, Australia, Paris, and Wimbledon, so in 2 weeks, and they want to have this 8-team tournament 4 times a year over 2 weeks somewhere around the world. I mean, presumably what we're going to do is we're going to just expand the year, are we, to have more than 365 days? We're going to flog the players even more, are we? Just going to force them to play not just in the daytime, but in the night time. But the other side of it, of course, is that they'll be very richly rewarded for playing it. The ECB say no. They're already, kind of like 4 Grand Slam tournaments, if you like. The IPL, the Big Bash, the T20 tournament in South Africa, and the 100. But of course, there are many other T20 tournaments around the world as well. What do you make of it? I mean, is it inevitable because they have so much money? And as we know, in sport, money eventually wins out.
Well, yes, I suppose that the short answer is yes, but I've heard about this being mooted for a while. When I was working for one of the IPL franchises a couple of years ago, they were already talking about the idea of a sort of travelling circus of cricket in a way. And I don't mean circus in a sort of exhibitionist kind of way, but actually proper cricket, but travelling around the world, playing these little tournaments in 2-week or 1-week slots. And the aim originally was to go with associate countries, to go to Singapore, to go to Canada, to go to maybe Kenya or somewhere like that. Clearly players with money anyway, places with money. Hong Kong would be another, where they could play a small tournament with 4 to 8 teams over a week and make it a sort of festival of cricket and involve the local players as well in that tournament and kind of beef up the cricket in that region and get local sponsors and so on and make it a bit like the way Formula One works. It's almost like a travelling festival of racing, isn't it? It goes to the different cities and it's there for a whole week and there's lots of events and it's an absolute sort of, extravaganza, isn't it? Well, I think the original idea was for that in Saudi Arabia, to be involved with Saudi Arabia, but now it seems to have developed a bit more as something, there's a clue to how this might pan out is that the most recent IPL auction was in Jeddah, in Saudi. So clearly there's a big tie-up with the IPL franchises to create a sort of, I suppose, Champions Trophy type of thing for domestic teams and to play these competitions. I mean, it's a lovely idea in the sense that it puts more money into the game, potentially, and beeps up the finances of one or two of the more impecunious cricketing countries, but it puts a massive pressure on the players again. So I completely agree with ECB that they don't sanction it because they do have to look after players' welfare, and there's too much temptation at the moment already. So it's a difficult one. I mean, what's quite interesting is that the recent International Masters tournament that Chris Tremlett played in, and Monty Panesar and Kevin Peterson played in it, a few others.
Steve Finn.
Till he broke down after one over. That attracted some good players. Sachin played in it, Chris Gale and others. And actually, it got crowds as well, amazingly. It got sort of 30 or 40,000 in some places, but that's India. So, they can sort of manage to sustain that kind of entertainment level. But you can't see Saudi really, generating big crowds for this, can you? So, I mean, apparently there are 4 million people of South Asian extraction living in Saudi Arabia. So they have a ready-made audience, I suppose. I mean, it just feels like too much at the moment, doesn't it? And you want investment from places like Saudi to keep the game, vibrant, but not at the expense of players just being burnt out.
Yeah, what the world needs now is more T20 competitions, doesn't it? It's absolutely crying out for it. What's the game going to look like in?
Oh, don't be gloomy. Look, it's all right. I mean, look, for God's sake, we're not like rugby or something where they're kind of trying to find every penny they can. And, Wales haven't won a game for 17 matches. I mean, it's, I suppose England haven't won a one-day game for quite a few matches either. But anyway, I mean, at least the English game, I think, is in quite good health financially. And I think we should be at least positive about that. With 2 weeks to go to the season, there's a lot to look forward to, actually. So don't be gloomy.
Well, I suppose there is a lot to look forward to. The new season is nearly upon us. It's a really exciting season and year ahead, isn't it? In terms of India coming and the Ashes at the end of it. I mean, it's going to be absolutely fascinating what turns up. I suppose it's the future down the line, isn't it?
Just don't think too far ahead.
No, you're probably right. You're probably right. Take each day as it comes. I'm a T20, but I don't want it every day of the week and every night of the year.
No.
Make it special. Make it something that people really want to go and watch and enjoy and take part in. But if you're just putting on another T20 tournament somewhere, I mean, in the end, everyone's just going to get.
Well, it's like eating chocolate every day, isn't it? So in the end, you get sick. So, there you are. Listen, anyway, let's just be positive about the season coming. And actually, by the way, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but nearly always an odd year, as in an odd numbered year, is a big cricket year. And an even-numbered year isn't so good. So the even-numbered years tend to clash with World Cups and Olympics and so on. But the odd-numbered years tend to be Ashes years where there's less competing major events. So we've got this summer, cricket. So look forward to it, enjoy it. And we'll be back at the weekend to preview the IPL. So you don't have to even listen if you don't want to.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I'm going away very happy now, knowing that it's an odd year. So it's going to be a good year. Great. Okay. Thanks for listening, everyone. Goodbye for now.